I never really questioned the long showers. I mean, we all need time to decompress, right? A bit of steam, some alone time, music playing in the background. It made sense. Evelyn worked hard. She balanced a full-time job in marketing, a part-time MBA, and somehow still managed to be a loving wife most of the time. So I let it go. I didn't think twice when she'd spend 45 minutes in the bathroom, music muffled behind the door, steam trailing out into the hallway. But then I started noticing the inconsistencies. One night, she said she was going to take a shower, that she needed to relax. But I had just finished vacuuming, and her phone was sitting on the armrest of the couch. When I picked it up to move it, I accidentally woke the screen. Bluetooth connected. Bose SoundLink connected. We didn't own a Bose speaker. I stared at the screen, confused. Maybe she got a new speaker for her shower? Maybe it was something she ordered on her own and just hadn't mentioned yet. No big deal. But curiosity itched under my skin like a rash. I swiped down, pulled up the Bluetooth history. There were 4 other devices. One was her AirPods. One was her car. And 2 were names I didn't recognize. Mike's Beats. Bedroom Echo. We didn't have an Echo. And I didn't know any Mike. I should have stopped there. I should have just let it go like I'd always done. But that night, something shifted in me. I waited until she was asleep, then quietly grabbed her phone again. She never used a passcode, or at least she didn't use to. But now there was one. 4 digits. I tried her birthday. Wrong. Our anniversary. Wrong. I sat there, heart pounding, knowing I couldn't guess too many times or I'd lock the phone. I set it back down and stared at the ceiling for hours, my stomach in knots. The next day, I watched her a little closer. She was jittery, tapping her phone screen too quickly, swiping away apps when I walked into the room. And when I casually asked her if she'd bought a new speaker for the bathroom, she froze for half a second, the kind of pause that feels microscopic but speaks volumes. "Oh yeah," she said, eyes shifting. "I just use my old Bose. From college. Thought I told you." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That night, while she was in the shower, I did something I'd never done before. I connected to our home router and checked the devices currently connected. One stood out, Mike's iPhone. I disconnected it. Instantly. 2 minutes later, Evelyn came out of the bathroom, towel in her hair, a weird edge in her voice. "Hey, did the Wi-Fi go out?" My music cut off. I shrugged. Maybe. Could be the storm. She narrowed her eyes for a second. I held my breath. Then she dropped it. But I didn't. That was the moment I knew there was someone else in her world. Someone close enough to be connecting to our network. Someone she thought I'd never notice. And now I had to find out who the hell Mike was, and why his devices were more comfortable in our house than I was. The next morning, Evelyn was already out of bed by the time I opened my eyes. Her side of the bed was cold, like she'd been up for a while. I walked downstairs and found her sipping coffee on the patio, phone in hand, screen angled away from me like always lately. She looked up, smiled that same practice smile. "Morning, babe." I nodded, played along, pretending I hadn't been up half the night replaying every moment of the past few weeks. After breakfast, she left for work. At least, that's what she said. As soon as the door closed, I went to her side of the closet. She kept an old gym bag tucked behind her boxes of boots, always zipped up. I'd never thought much of it. But when I opened it, my breath caught in my throat. Inside, there were a few changes of clothes. Not workout clothes. Lingerie. And a hotel key card. The kind with the magnetic stripe, unmarked. I turned it over in my hand and noticed a small number pressed into the plastic. 317. I didn't even hesitate. I jumped in my car, heart pounding like a war drum, and drove straight to the only hotel within 5 miles of our house. The woman at the front desk looked bored until I handed her the key. "I think I left my charger in 317. Can I run up real quick?" She looked at the card, then at me and shrugged. "Sure. Just be quick." My hands were shaking as I took the elevator. When the door opened to the 3rd floor, the hallway was dead silent. I walked to 317, slid the key in, and prayed it wouldn't work. It clicked. The door opened, and what I saw made my stomach drop. The room was clean, freshly made, but on the table, there was a half-empty bottle of wine and 2 glasses. A man's jacket lay across the back of the chair. Not mine. The bathroom door was slightly ajar. I opened it. No one inside. But the shower was still dripping. Someone had been here, and recently. I backed out, heart hammering, and took one last glance around the room. That's when I saw it. A receipt on the nightstand, half crumpled. A takeout order with 2 meals. Paid for by a credit card. The name on the card? Michael Carson. I took a picture, drove home, and started digging. That name, Mike Carson, wasn't in Evelyn's contacts. Wasn't on her Instagram, Facebook, nowhere. But then I remembered something. A couple months ago, she mentioned a new client at work who was a little too flirty. She'd laughed it off. I hadn't thought about it since. Until now. I checked her LinkedIn. Searched the company she worked for. There he was. Michael Carson. Regional VP. I clicked through his profile. Married. 2 kids. Lived in a town 20 minutes away. A perfect life on the surface. I leaned back in my chair, ball rising in my throat. This was the man who had his Bluetooth speaker paired to my wife's phone. The man whose name was hidden behind passcodes and hotel key cards and 2 glasses of wine. My wife had another life. A secret one. And the worst part, she was damn good at hiding it, until now. That night I couldn't sleep. I just lay there staring at the ceiling while Evelyn slept beside me like nothing was wrong. Every time she shifted, I imagined her whispering his name instead of mine, her hands wrapped around him in that hotel room I had walked through just hours before. I couldn't believe I was lying next to a stranger, someone capable of orchestrating an entirely different life behind my back. At 3 a.m., I slipped out of bed and went into my office. I had taken pictures of everything, the receipt, the wine bottle label, even the hotel room number. I opened my laptop and started a folder. Truth. Every click, every image, every screenshot added fuel to a fire burning in my chest. I logged into our phone provider's portal. We shared a family plan, and I could access her call and text history. Dozens of messages to a number not saved in her contacts. Always after 10 p.m., always short bursts of back and forth for months. I traced the number through a public search. It belonged to a Michael C. Carson. Now I had proof. But proof wasn't enough. I needed to know how far this went, and how long. The next morning, I called in sick to work and followed her. She kissed me goodbye with the same soft lie in her eyes, then drove off in her usual route toward the freeway. But instead of taking the exit for downtown, where her office building was, she pulled off near the edge of town. I stayed back, heart pounding, trying not to breathe too loud in the car. She pulled into a strip mall parking lot, parked, and waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then he arrived. I recognized him immediately. Same face from LinkedIn, but older in person, wearing a smug grin like he owned the world. He didn't even look around before walking to her car and climbing into the passenger seat. They sat there, talking, laughing. Then she leaned over and kissed him. It wasn't quick. It wasn't hesitant. It was the kind of kiss you only give someone when you've done it 100 times. I took pictures. My hands were shaking so badly I had to rest the phone on the steering wheel. After 10 minutes, they both got out and walked into a coffee shop like they were just another couple enjoying the morning. No shame. No fear. I wanted to walk in there and scream. Instead, I drove away. Because I wasn't ready. Not yet. I needed to know everything. Every secret. Every lie. That night, I confronted her. Gently, like a man still playing dumb. How was work today? She smiled. Stressful. You know how Mondays are. I stared at her, wondering how many times that same mouth had told me that same lie. She had no idea I knew. Not yet. But she would. Soon. I just needed one more piece of the puzzle. And I had an idea exactly where to find it. The next day I waited until she left for work again, her predictable morning meetings suddenly taking on a sinister meaning. And once the garage door shut behind her, I went to her closet. It felt invasive, even wrong, but that hesitation didn't last long. I pulled down her travel bag, the one she'd used last weekend for her so-called team-building retreat. Inside were the usual suspects: leggings, a yoga mat, some makeup, toiletries. But underneath the mat, tucked into a side compartment, was a folded piece of paper. A printed itinerary. But not for a yoga retreat. For a weekend stay at a spa resort 3 hours away, under a reservation for Evelyn Carson. Carson. His last name. My stomach twisted. I flipped through her drawers next. I wasn't sure what I expected to find, love letters, photos, but I found something worse. A small notebook shoved behind her scarves. The first few pages were blank, but a few sheets in, I found notes. Pages of entries that read like diary fragments. Some were to-do lists for trips, others were scribbled thoughts that looked like she was working through guilt, or maybe just planning around it. One read, "Call Michael after dinner. Tell James it's just Karen from work again." Another said, "If he finds out, say it's just emotional support, nothing physical." My fingers curled around the edges of the notebook as my chest burned with something I hadn't felt in years. Betrayal so raw it bordered on madness. She had contingency plans for getting caught. She had scripts. Later that night, I installed a hidden camera in the living room. I hated that it had come to this, but I needed her to be caught in her own words, not just in grainy photos or misinterpreted GPS logs. I also copied her entire phone to an external drive using a backup tool I'd downloaded earlier that week. Messages, photos, call logs, everything. And that's when I saw it. A series of messages from Michael that turned my blood to ice. "Only one more week. I told you, it's almost done." Then, "You sure he won't be home this weekend?" Followed by her response, "He's clueless. He thinks I'm going to a women's seminar. We're in the clear." I sat there staring at those words like they were in another language. But they weren't. I knew what they meant. They were planning something. Not just an affair. Something more. That night, she came home glowing. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if I wanted Thai or sushi for dinner. I told her Thai. She smiled, completely unaware that I now knew almost everything. But I still had one card left to play, her upcoming weekend. She had no idea I'd already booked a room at the same resort under a different name. No idea I'd be checking in hours before she did. No idea I would be watching. And waiting. I arrived at the resort 2 hours before check-in officially opened. But cash at the front desk can still buy a lot, early access, discretion, even a complimentary bottle of champagne I'd never open. I registered under the name Jonathan Blake, using a prepaid card and fake email. Everything about this trip had to be invisible. I requested a room on the same floor she'd be on, thanks to the itinerary I'd found. And when I got into my room, I scoped out the hallway, the lobby cameras, even the bar. I wasn't just here to spy. I was here to confirm everything. I didn't know what I would do after that. Leave? Expose her? Or something worse, something darker that kept clawing at the edge of my mind. At 5:43 p.m., a black sedan pulled into the resort lot. She stepped out, hair curled, new dress. She looked radiant in a way I hadn't seen in years. Not because of me, but because of him. Michael Carson stepped out right behind her. Tall, confident, carrying both their bags. Like they'd done this dozens of times. They walked in holding hands until she quickly let go near the lobby, her eyes scanning the room. She was still careful, still hiding, even here. But not careful enough. From behind a hallway mirror panel, I snapped photo after photo. Every touch. Every laugh. Her hand on his chest as they waited at check-in. When they took the elevator, I followed the moment it returned. 6th floor. Room 614. I memorized the number like it was burned into me. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my room, listening through a paper-thin wall with a parabolic mic I bought online 2 days ago. I caught snatches of conversation. Laughter. At one point, her voice moaned his name, and my hand clenched the edge of the table so hard it nearly cracked. I thought of all the times she'd come home after these retreats and kissed me. Held me. Lied to me. The mic picked up another sound. A phone call. Her voice. "Yes, James thinks I'm in Vermont." "No, he never questions it." Then Michael's voice. "He will eventually. What if he finds this place?" Silence. Then her again, quieter. "If he finds out, I'll tell him it was a one-time slip. I can spin it. I always do." I pressed stop on the recorder and stared at the wall. I had proof. But I wasn't done yet. In the morning, before checkout, I printed photos from my phone and slid them into an envelope. Then I slipped that envelope under their door, room 614, just as I heard them moving around. 5 minutes later, I watched from a bench by the garden as Michael stormed out. She followed after him, barefoot, shouting. Crying. I filmed the entire scene. The truth wasn't just real now, it was undeniable. But I still hadn't decided what I would do. Let her come home to find her bags on the porch? Serve her divorce papers in front of her parents? Or do what I was thinking more and more about? Face her directly, with every lie printed in black and white. Because this wasn't just betrayal. This was war. She came home 2 days later, dragging her suitcase up the driveway like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just blown up the life we built together over the last 9 years. I watched her from the upstairs window, waiting to see if she'd pretend again, if she'd kiss me like usual, give me the same fake smile, ask what I wanted for dinner. But this time, she hesitated before unlocking the front door. Her shoulders stiffened when she saw that the lights were off and my car was still parked outside. When she walked into the house, I was already sitting in the living room, silent, phone in hand, the envelope of printed photos beside me on the coffee table. She paused in the doorway like she'd seen a ghost. "James," she said, setting the suitcase down slowly. "You scared me. Why are you sitting in the dark?" I didn't answer. I just stared. She glanced at the envelope, then at my phone, then back at me. That was when I saw it. Her entire face changed. Not fear. Not shock. Just calculation. She was scanning the room like a lawyer prepping for cross-examination. "You went through my stuff," she said finally. Not an apology. Not a denial. Just that. "I tracked your location," I said. "You were never at a retreat. You were in a hotel with him. With Michael." Her mouth twitched. "I can explain." "Can you?" I asked, standing. I picked up the envelope and tossed it onto the coffee table, so the photos spilled out. Her hands didn't move to touch them. She just stared. "How long?" I asked. She didn't respond. "How long, Emma?" She took a breath. "We started texting again last year. It wasn't supposed to go anywhere. But then we met for coffee one afternoon and you fell onto a motel bed with him?" I snapped. Her face hardened. "You don't get to judge me, James. You work 60 hours a week. You barely look at me. I felt alone in this house. For years." I laughed bitterly. "So instead of talking to me, you found someone else. Someone who left you in college and suddenly reappeared just in time to wreck everything we had." She walked closer, her voice lowering. "You don't understand how it feels to be invisible in your own marriage. And you don't understand what it's like to have your whole life detonated by a notification on your phone." I turned away. I couldn't look at her anymore. "I want a divorce," I said. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. You'll hear from them soon." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "And what if I'm pregnant?" The room stopped. The air itself froze. "What did you say?" I whispered. "I missed my period," she said. "I took a test yesterday. It was positive. I don't know whose it is." My head felt like it had been hit with a brick. My vision tunneled. My chest tightened. "You cheated on me, lied to me, humiliated me. And now you want to what? Keep me around just in case it's mine?" "No," she said quietly. "I'm telling you because I thought you had a right to know. That's all." I didn't reply. I just walked upstairs, locked the bedroom door behind me, and sat on the edge of the bed. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, had betrayed me in every possible way. And now I didn't even know if the child she was carrying was mine or the result of an affair that shattered everything. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was Emma's face when she said she might be pregnant, calm, steady, like she had rehearsed the words. And I kept wondering if that was her plan all along. To blow up our marriage, then try to anchor herself to me with a maybe baby. When I finally got out of bed, the house was silent. Her suitcase was still by the door. The envelope of motel photos was gone. I didn't know if she'd moved them, or if she just couldn't stand to look at the truth laid out like evidence in a courtroom. I left the house before sunrise, drove to my brother's place, and stayed there all day. I ignored her calls. I ignored her texts. I couldn't bring myself to respond. Not when every message felt like a trap. That night, she left me a voicemail. "James, I made an appointment. For the clinic. I'll go tomorrow. I'm not asking you to come. I just thought you'd want to know." I didn't know what to feel. Was I relieved? Horrified? Angry that she made a decision without me? Or grateful that she didn't try to use the pregnancy to keep me tethered to her lies? The next morning, I drove back to the house. I didn't go inside. I just sat in the driveway and watched the front door like I was watching the last act of a play I never wanted to be in. Around 10 a.m., she came out wearing jeans, a hoodie, sunglasses. No makeup. She got into her car and drove away. I followed from a distance, not because I didn't believe her, but because part of me needed to see it with my own eyes. To know it was real. She went to the clinic. She was there for over an hour. When she came out, she looked like a different person. Not broken. Just emptied. She didn't cry. She didn't call me. She just drove home, slowly, like she had no idea what to do next. I waited another 10 minutes, then drove off. I didn't want her to know I'd followed. That night, she sent me one final message. "It's done. I'll move out in the morning." She didn't ask for a fight. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't even ask for closure. And maybe that was the worst part. how easy it was for her to walk away after everything we'd been through. The next morning, she was gone. Her clothes, her books, her side of the closet empty. The house felt cold, hollow. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the indentation her body used to make in the mattress. I should have felt peace. Or relief. But all I felt was silence. That suffocating kind of silence that doesn't mean calm. It means absence. It means a life ripped in half and left to bleed out in the quiet. 2 weeks passed. The house was quiet, still, and lifeless, like it had gone into mourning with me. Her scent still lingered in the closet, even though all her clothes were gone. I caught myself instinctively setting 2 plates out at dinner, reaching for my phone to text her stupid things I used to share during the day. Muscle memory of a marriage that no longer existed. I didn't tell many people, just my brother, and eventually my mom, who cried silently on the other end of the phone but didn't ask for details. I think she knew. She'd never really trusted Emma, though she never said it aloud. I spent my days working overtime and my nights scrolling mindlessly through our old texts, photos, memories, torturing myself, wondering how I'd missed the signs. I even started going to therapy, something I never thought I'd do. My therapist said something that stuck. Infidelity doesn't always mean someone stopped loving you. It often means they stopped loving themselves and used someone else to escape the mirror. That hit me like a freight train, because deep down, I realized Emma had been unhappy long before she ever cheated. And maybe I had been too. But we just kept pretending. Pretending marriage was fine. Pretending distance was normal. Pretending we'd circle back to each other once things settled. But things never settle unless you do the hard work. And we never did. One night, I got a message. Unknown number. Just one line. She's with him now. I stared at the screen, numb. I didn't respond. The next day, I saw it for myself. At the grocery store, of all places. Emma, pushing a cart, laughing with Michael like they'd been together forever. Her hand brushed his. He kissed her temple. They looked happy. That wrecked me in a way I wasn't ready for. Not because I wanted her back. Not because I thought we could fix it. But because it was confirmation that everything we'd built was now just rubble, and she'd already rebuilt elsewhere. That night, I opened our wedding album. The smiles, the vows, the honeymoon photos. It all felt like a cruel joke now. I closed it halfway through and shoved it in a box I didn't label. That's when I realized I had to make a choice. Stay buried in what was, or crawl forward into whatever comes next. The next morning, I woke up and didn't check her socials. That was a first. No late-night stalking, no rereading old messages. Just silence. I stared at the ceiling and let the quiet sit on my chest like a weight I had decided not to push off. Something shifted in me after seeing her with him in the store. It wasn't rage, not anymore. It was resignation. Acceptance. Maybe even the start of healing. I wasn't ready to say I was okay, but I was ready to stop bleeding. That day, I packed up the rest of her stuff she'd left behind. The books, the scarves, the little souvenirs from our trips. I didn't cry. I didn't play sad music or pour a drink. I just filled the box, taped it shut, and dropped it off at her sister's place. No note. No warning. Just closure. And then I did something that I hadn't done in months. I called an old friend. His name was Caleb. We used to hit the trails together before life got complicated. Let's do the river loop this weekend, I said. He didn't ask questions. Just said, you bring the water, I'll bring the silence. That Saturday, I hiked with him for hours. And somewhere between mile 4 and 5, I realized I wasn't thinking about her. Not even a little. I was thinking about my legs, the mud, the birds, the sun on my neck. Life. Not pain. I didn't know it then, but that was the first time I truly stepped into my future without dragging the weight of my past. It wasn't some big movie moment. No dramatic speech, no cleansing cry. Just peace. And peace, it turns out, is loud when you haven't heard it in a while. That night, I took a long shower, made myself real food. Not just ramen or cereal. And I lit a candle that I used to hate because she loved it. Funny thing? It smelled different now. Like freedom. Like me. It's been 3 months since I saw her on that store camera. 3 months since the illusion finally shattered. I never told her I saw it. Never messaged. Never confronted. What would be the point? She made her choice long before I found out. And maybe I made mine too, in all the small ways that love dies. Unanswered questions, ignored instincts, pretending not to notice when her smile started showing up less and her phone never left her hand. I've learned that not all goodbyes come with door slams and screaming matches. Some goodbyes arrive quietly, like fog settling into your home. So gradually, you don't even realize you're alone until the silence feels natural. I changed jobs. Smaller office, less stress, better sleep. I started writing again. Nothing big, just thoughts, fragments, memories I'm ready to let go of. And when I write about her, I don't feel hate. Just a strange warmth, like remembering an old scar and being proud it healed. My friends keep asking when I'll start dating again. Maybe soon. But I'm not rushing. I've spent too long trying to fill the silence. Now I'm learning to sit in it and listen. I deleted the last picture of us from my phone last week. Not out of spite. It just didn't feel like it belonged there anymore. That version of me, the one in the photo smiling beside a woman I didn't truly know, that version deserves rest. Deserves peace. And me? I'm still figuring things out. But I know one thing for sure now. When someone shows you who they are, don't wait for the rerun. Believe it. And when the truth hurts, don't run from it. Let it break you if it must. Because sometimes the breaking is where the rebuilding finally begins.